Hi, everyone. Welcome to the 5-Star Chemicals monthly presentation. I'm Erin Hamrick, the marketing manager at 5-Star. Just a couple of housekeeping things before we get started. Please be sure to tell us where you're tuning in from in the chat over to the right, and interact with everybody else who's on the call. If you do have a question, please use the Ask a Question prompt at the bottom of the screen. That way, at the end, we can get through all of the questions and people can see what questions are being answered, and we make sure we get them all answered at the end. Another reminder, this is being recorded, and I will send out the recording tomorrow as a follow-up email along with some contact information for our speaker. And so without further ado, I would like to introduce Mike Myers, who is our malthouse manager from Shoot, and he will take it away from here. Thanks, Mike.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me. This is going to be a visual presentation, not so much an oral lecture on malting, but I do want to talk about where we are as a company, what we're doing, kind of products we're making, how we're making it, how we built our business, just kind of take you through a journey of all the things that we have going on here at Shoot Malting. So let me go ahead and share my screen. Okay, this is a view of one of our fields right outside of our malt house. This is looking towards the west, towards the Rocky Mountains at sunset. It is a beautiful piece of property that we're on. We're basically about 15 minutes south of Fort Collins and about 15 minutes north of Longmont. So we're kind of smack dab in between those big cities up north. But this is the entrance into our facility here. So a little bit about who we are. We are farmers first. We are a 5th generation farm. We have grown barley for Coors and Anheuser-Busch for about 30 years before taking the leap into malting. Currently, we're working on transitioning our family farm out of the commodity markets where we used to grow corn for silage and for the dairies. And we're transitioning out of that and then moving into some small grains. Help keep the farm basically moving forward into the future. We started our malting company with our very first batch in 2016. A couple years before that was a lot of prior planning and building to get us to that first batch. We operate on what's called Casper Schultz malting system, which there will be some pictures and a little explanation further along the line. So we have 3 10-ton malting drums in our facility, and each one of those drums produces 10 tons of barley at a time, and then our weekly output is about 30 tons. So we're turning over one of our drums a batch pretty much every 7 days. There's a photograph of our team. We're only missing a couple of team members up on the top right. We are a really small team doing a lot of really, really awesome things. Below and to the left is a picture of Todd Olander, who is the owner, founder, and his parents, which they also are invested in the company, and we grow barley and grains on the family farm. And then a little background about me. Who am I? I've been a home brewer since about 2006 is when my wife first bought me a homebrew kit. And it's probably, if you ask her, it was the worst decision ever because I just went down the rabbit hole and consumed as much information as I could on how to make beer, where to drink beer, what ingredients, and I just thirst for knowledge, literally, on how to do that. Personally, I've had about 7 GABF Pro-Am selections, which I haven't won a GABF award personally yet, but that is on my list of goals of things to accomplish. And that really, it all kicked off with an invitation. I won a contest to go out to Sierra Nevada and participate in their beer camp program. Basically, they flew me out to Chico and put me up for 3 days and turned me and about 8 other guys loose in the brewery, and we got to make our own beer there. And what an overwhelming, amazing experience into this world of craft beer. So I did a lot of home brewing. In 2009, I was 3rd place for home brewer of the year in the state of Colorado. So I've always had the bug for brewing and been trying to produce as high quality beer as possible through competitions. But my job, I was a assistant store manager for Kroger King Soopers, which is a nationwide grocery chain. So I worked for them for about 17 years, starting from the bottom and then just working my way up to the top of running those stores. So during those 17 years, once I had picked up that brewing bug, I kind of, tried to get into the market, tried to get into a brewing position somewhere, and I could never break in. I didn't have any practical experience, even though I was making really great beer, very consistent stuff as a home brewer with a lot of process control and, just turning out a lot of really nice beer, but I just could never break into that market. And then I saw what was going on with Root Shoot and what they were building. I got to see it from basically the ground floor moving forward. And once I saw what they were building, I could see long term and think to myself, I really want to be a part of this. And so I just kept showing up at events, wearing T-shirts, connecting them with some of their first accounts, doing all the things just totally unpaid because that was where I wanted to be. And finally, we got to a point where I was needed to help run some operations and keep everything moving forward on a day-to-day basis. And then that's when I came on board for Root Shoot. I have taken some classes at Montana State University for the advanced production of craft malt. And I also have some certificates from North Dakota State University for the barley to beer program. And since I joined Root Shoot, it's going to be almost 5 years. So we've been in operation for 6 years, and I've been running it for about 5. So a little continued background on our operation. So the farming is life for us. There's a picture of our farm crew that are doing all the heavy lifting, planting, all the harvesting, driving the trucks, the combines. So on our family farm, we grow barley, corn, wheat. We have a white wheat and a red wheat. And then we have what's called Olenvetski, which is a Swedish grain. It's basically a heritage material. And then we grow some rye, oats, and alfalfa. And we even gave our hand at growing hemp one year, which didn't go very well. But the farm is always going to be first. We are a malting company second. So just a little bit on where we're located. It's in South Loveland, which, like I said, was just south of Fort Collins. And we are farming on about 1,500 total acres. Now, we only own about 200 of those acres. So a lot of our farmland is basically rented and leased to us. And then we have a couple of farmers that work around us that help us do some farming. So we use some dry land, flood irrigation, and we have some pivot for basically farming techniques. And this picture on the right is Todd, who's out there checking on the corn. So just a little bit of a backstory on us. Like I said, we grew malting barley for Coors and Anheuser-Busch for 30 years before we ventured into the craft malt production. So we had 30 years worth of knowledge of trying to hit the specs for, the most technically proficient brewers in the world before we started. So we knew we had that under our belt. So, that's when we took a visit. Todd's Todd and his parents took a visit to New Belgium in Fort Collins, and they were talking with the brewers, and they were asking them where they got their raw materials from. And it was at that time the brewers were telling Todd and his parents that they were getting them from Europe. And, there's a real disconnect where the family was growing high quality malting barley basically 20 minutes down the road. And why were they not using that material? And so that's kind of where the aha moment happened for us, is when during that visit. And at that time that we started down this road of, planning, building, there was no local supplier for malted barley in our area. And if you think about it, Fort Collins is considered the mecca of craft beer, but there had been no local supplier for it. So this is an opportunity for us to get into basically a niche market. And then it did a couple other things as diversifying the farm. So basically to get it out of the commodity market and something that's a little more stable that we can control. We started the malting company. We planted about 6 different varieties of barley, and now we are down to just one, which is Genie barley. So some of the barley varieties that we've either malted or grown are listed here on the left. Metcalf, which is a Canadian variety. It's known for fast germination, usually in about 4 days' time. Meredith. Odyssey is a European style barley, or European lineage barley, and it's considered a non-GN producer. And right now it's mostly focused for the distilling world. We had a stout barley that was from North Dakota State University, and that one was bred for Anheuser-Busch, which has fallen out of favor. We've also malted some Calypso from some Kansas folks that are growing barley that we brought in for some contract malting. We just got done malting a batch of Violetta. So that was our first time we've ever malted any Violetta barley. And we also did that through some contract malting. But what we hang our hat on is that Genie barley, and that's from Lima Grain, is the provider for the seed. And what it is that Genie barley provides low beta glucans in the barley and the finished product. And it does well in all 3 phases for us. So you got to think that we are planting it, we're growing it, and then we're malting it, and then we're distributing it to the breweries. So we have to have a barley that does well in all 3 phases for us. It grows well, malts well, brews or distills well. So we have since over time cut down on our varieties to just having one. And a lot of that is for some streamlining of operations for us at the Malt House. But we really like the profile and the finished product that the Genie barley is. And then we also brought in a couple of varieties called Thunder and Lightning. And this is from Oregon State, a new Oregon State University release. So we actually planted it in some winter barley, and we're just kind of seeing what happens. We're not really sure. This is the first time that it's been grown out here, and we just are taking a little stab at it and see. That way we can provide some feedback and maybe get some barley in the ground for the winter time. So what makes our operation truly unique is that we have total full integration on our operation. So we select the seed, we plant the seed, we tend to the land, we are storing it, we are malting it, we are cleaning it, and then we deliver. So we sow, we grow, we malt, and we deliver. So there's only a small handful of malting companies throughout the whole world that operate on that vertical integration scale. And pictured on the right is Ian, who is our badass delivery driver in his truck that he drives around the state of Colorado. So that vertical integration has really helped the family farm and helped us grow because there are no middlemen. We're not buying anything. We run on a really small team. So literally by the time a brewer gets their malts at the brewery or distiller, it's touched maybe 2 people's hands by the time it gets to them. So we've just like shortened that chain of custody for all the breweries in our area. Pictured, you're going to see some of our malting equipment. Like I said, we had 3 10-ton Casper Schultz malting drums. You can kind of get a size of scale with these. Now, one of these weighs about 34,000 pounds, just the drum portion. So they are quite large, and then they hold 10 tons of barley inside of them. So that just kind of gives you a look at the equipment. And then the scale you can see in the middle picture of someone standing next to the manhole, and just how really massive these drums are. A little bit about Casper Schultz is that the equipment is from Bamberg, Germany, and it gives us, this is like top end malting equipment for, the craft world. And we went down the road of buying this top end equipment because it gave us full control over everything. When we were discussing with some of the brewers in our area about starting this malting company, a lot of the feedback that we got was that if it wasn't consistent, that the breweries just weren't interested in what we had to offer. So that led us down the road of buying this equipment, which gave us full control over all parameters inside of this malting drum. That way we can just produce a very consistent product. Yep. And we have about 3 million pounds is our potential yearly output. So just touch base a little bit on malting. So on the right, you can see some germinating grain. So you can see the rootlets on it. We predominantly are growing spring barley, which has a shorter growing season. We generally plant as soon as the ground becomes soft after the last freezes, and then we harvest sometime early. It's early August, late July, just really depends on the weather for the year. But that's pretty much what we're planting is that 2-row spring barley. That's of the Genie variety. Just a couple things I wanted to point out. There's a picture here if you ever want to see the difference between 2-row and 6-row and what it looks like. So that's looking down on the stalk. So 2-row barley really just has 2 rows of kernels, whereas your 6-row barley has 6. Just a couple of cool things I wanted to point out is in this picture in the top, you can see what is the acrospire of the barley. And so what that will be is that will eventually be the stalk of the plant. So we're charting and making sure that we're stopping the growth of this grain before it becomes a plant. So, and then in the bottom piece here, you can see there's some what's called malter's thumbs. This is a technical term for malting, where when you squish these grains in your fingers, once they're further down in the state of germination, it leaves a paste on your fingers. So that's how you know that it's about time to go to kiln, is that it leaves that paste-like material. So if you squeeze the grains early in germination, they're still hard and they haven't softened up all the way. So it doesn't leave that paste-like material. It's pretty cool. That's how they've been determining that barley was ready to go for kiln for ages. Like that's the technical term for that is malter's thumb. And so just to touch base on malting, so it consists of 3 different phases. So there's the steeping phase, the germination phase, and the kilning phase. Steeping phase is where you're basically just softening the kernel by submerging it in water. So right now we're running at a total time for steeping for our barley is about 24 hours, where it spends maybe 10 of those hours underwater and then the rest of the time out, where it's basically dry, so it gives it a chance to like kick in its metabolism and start thinking like it's going to start growing. And then germination, this is a look inside of our drum. And so you can kind of see the grain bed on the right-hand side here and what's going on in the interior of the drum. So basically all that grain sits in there about 3 feet deep. And we're basically controlling the environment inside of this vessel, where we have full control over the temperature, the air mixture, the air speed, whether it's humid in there or not. And then if you look on the top, there's a sprinkler line that runs down the middle of this, and we can apply water directly onto our grains. Now, we're considered a non-traditional maltster. I don't know if anybody can see the screen, but this is Linus. He wanted to say hi. So we're considered a non-traditional maltster, that we're only doing 2 steeps, where your traditional malting is basically 3 steeps. But because our equipment has the sprinkler line in it, and it allows us to put water directly onto the grain bed, so that almost acts as a 3rd steep for us. In the bottom left, you can kind of see the steep tank. So in this picture, we're actively moving the barley out of the steep tank into one of these germination drums, one of the vessels. Basically, we move the barley around our facility as a wet slurry from the steep tank to the drums. So we're using all that steeping water to help move that stuff into the different vessels. And then the 3rd phase is the kilning portion, which is basically you're just air drying out the barley. So if you think about it, we bring barley in at maybe raw at 8% moisture, and then we're hydrating it to about 44 to 45%. And then we're drying it out in the kilning process to anywhere from 3 to 5%. And that's what it goes out the door as. So that kilning process is basically just removing the water out of the kernels. Some cool pictures I kind of wanted to talk about. In the top and the middle is like a cross-section look of a piece of barley. So you can see the cell walls inside of this kernel. So what we're trying to do is have the water infiltrate that entire layer of cell walls to make it through the whole kernel. So it has to go through all these little compartments. So we're truly just softening the grain up. And then we have a moisture reader here on the right, where we're just making sure that we are very consistent in our processes and that we're hitting whatever moisture content we're looking for. And then the bottom left is a picture of the hydration of the grains. So it's kind of hard to see, but I do like to show people this picture because you can kind of conceptualize what's going on. So the kernels on the very far left are considered not hydrated. If you look at the top, there's a little chart that says 1/4 to 3/4, 3/4 to 1, and then 1 all the way across. So that 1 section is kernels that are completely hydrated. So they have almost like a translucent color to them, whereas you move to the left, they're less hydrated, and so you start to see more of that starchy material existing in there. So the idea is that you want to completely hydrate the kernel. So we're shooting to get all grains, all pieces of barley into this fully hydrated category to the right as we move through the steeping and germination part. And then there's a really cool picture on the bottom here. On the left, we have what's basically our base malt, our Genie Pale. And then on the right, we have what is our Munich 10. And this is kind of a look to see what's going on inside of those kernels after the kilning process. So on the left, we have a very bright white starch material, and that's basically your two-row or your standard base malt. And then on the right, we have something that's been kilned at a little higher temperature, which is our Munich 10. And you can kind of see the changes that are happening inside of those kernels. Now, part of that Munich 10 recipe that we have developed is we get it really hot inside of the drum to where it's the point of saccharification temperatures of that starch material. And so it starts to change inside of that kernel. So the barley on the left that's cut open, that's really bright, has been low heat applied and just the moisture removed, whereas the barley on the right has basically been liquefied, and you start to get some caramelization or crystallization inside of those kernels. Something that I am incredibly proud of for our operation is that we are the most awarded craft maltster in the entire world through the Craft Malters Guild. So we have taken home 4 medals in 4 consecutive years. Every year that they've had this competition, we actually won Best in Show the very first year they had it, and then we've continued to bring home a medal every single year that they've had this competition. And this is an international competition. Last year, there were some malting companies from Italy and Australia that also took some stuff home. So we're truly hanging our hat on that. We are producing some very, very high quality craft malt here in our area. It just goes to show, being awarded through this, that we truly are making the right decisions on barley variety and the farming aspect, and then the malting, and all those things that go into it. This is some pretty fantastic validation for that. And then this year they're having this competition again, and they have it open for four different categories, and we're really hoping to bring home another medal to keep that streak going. And then a little bit about like the QC, QA stuff that we do. Every single batch that comes out, we are doing hot steeps. We send out for COAs. We want to make sure that we are transparent and that we are providing a high quality material for the brewers and distillers out there. Right now we're producing 14 different varieties of malted, either barley or wheat, oats, rye. And what you have is on the bottom, this is our complete lineup of all the products, and then just kind of the color range that we're hitting on those products. We have found most favor in providing base malts for the brewing community. That's kind of where we've really shined, is making those base malts. And we are working really hard to make sure that we are extremely consistent in our products that are going out the door. And I think a lot of what has helped us grow is being able to deliver freshness. So breweries in our area are getting malt, 3 weeks from kiln time, as opposed to 7 months from some of the overseas stuff. And then there's a lot of volatility in that shipping and market out there. So we're delivering extremely fresh malt to the breweries around us, and it's making a big difference for the beers that those breweries are producing. Right now we have about 100 plus active breweries that we are partners with here in just Colorado. We do have a few out-of-state ones. We send some malt down to Alabama. We send some malt to Texas. We sent some stuff to Miami and Boston as well. And Montana are our outliers out of the state. But for us, we found a lot of favor just in our own market. There's 300 plus breweries just in the state of Colorado. So we're barely just scratching the surface on potential of what we could provide in our area. And these are some of the larger consumers. Coors, which runs the Colorado Native brand beers, that is made with all of our malted barley. So that's a pretty big feather in the cap that the most technical brewers in the world are using our malt to produce beer. So what truly is making us different is that we are really working to make better beer for our breweries. We work hand in hand with them. We are an involved partner in what's going on in the community, meaning that we're not just shipping pallets out. We literally are showing up and shoveling the mash tun and helping the breweries design beers with our products. We're a really small team, but we're getting out there in all these different facets to help these brewers make better beer with our products. Truly, it's self-serving, but their success equals our success. Just a couple things I wanted to point out here is Upslope's new oatmeal stout that just came out. Like this is a big win for us as a company. This is one of our regional specific breweries here in Colorado, where they actually list Root Shoot English Pale Malt as one of their products or as one of their ingredients on the side of the can. And then you take it a step further, and Upslope is a craft malt certified brewery. So getting those two call outs on a can that is distributed regionally here is a gigantic win for, telling the story of using high quality ingredients, them trusting us. And just to talk a little bit more about this Upslope beer is that we started having the discussions about as a Maris Otter replacement, because the brewery's seeing increased cost in shipping and they were looking for an alternative, shorten their carbon footprint up. And so we started having these discussions about, being able to provide malt for this big beer release. And so we just kept down the path, and this is what we came out. And for those that are here in this area, you should really seek this beer out because it is pretty darn fantastic. And it's using one of my favorite malts that we make, which is that English Pale. We get out and we help troubleshoot with all the breweries if they do run into some issues. We shovel out the mash. We will show up and help breweries get from point A to B. Like I said, we're a really small team, but we're out actively participating in our market. And like I said, the pallet just doesn't show up. It shows up with us, which is fun. And then the other part of our business is the distilling side. So when we originally opened Root Shoot Malting, we were specifically focused on producing malt. It was not truly on anybody's radar that we had this other avenue of the distilling industry. Like, to be honest, that wasn't on anybody's radar. But we already grew corn for the dairies in our area, and it's another one of those aha moments where it's like, well, whiskey or bourbon is made out of corn. We grow corn. Well, how do we cross paths here with our farm and then the malting company? So currently, we have about 15 active distillery partners here in our area, also in Texas as well. And we are supplying a variety of the malted products and the unmalted products. So that has been an unbelievably happy offshoot for our operation, to the point where now we're almost split between 50-50 between raw materials and actual malted materials leaving our facility. And then these are some of our partners, where Breckenridge Distillery is our largest distilling partner. Just kind of some of the cool things that we're doing. We partnered with Family Jones Distillery, which is here in Denver, to do some corn trials. So we grew a couple different varieties of corn. This was 2 years ago. And we segregated all that corn and sent it to the distillery in barrel format. So they were going to produce enough liquor to fill one barrel with whatever corn we sent. And so we sent 4 different corns, and they distilled enough to fill 4 different barrels. And we were just trying to get some feedback on which varieties of corn are the most flavorful and which ones have the most extract, and what they like the most, how it works for them in their processes. And we're using that information to help downstream, like when we go to plant, do we actually want to plant this corn? Is it viable? Is it useful for the distillery? We also have some rye varieties. Like we're in quite a few conversations with Benton Distilling in Texas, and they produce a very specific kind of rye whiskey, and they're looking for different varieties of rye, and they want to showcase the different expressions from those rye. So, we're continually looking around trying to source some different rye and get those planted in the ground and then grown. Now we're planning stuff years in advance. Like these aren't just things that happen overnight. We've got to, allocate the farmland, grow it, the water, everything that goes with it. And then we have something cool we did last year, which is the Abernathy corn. We brought some Abernathy corn in and grew it, a pretty small plot. And we're going to use that for just a couple of bourbon barrels, but it's a very specific corn that is it's grown in the northeast portion. And there's a really cool story about this Abernathy corn if you ever want to look at it. I took a little screenshot of the story for it, but this corn grew in the upstate New York area, Maine area. And in the year 1816, it's known as the year without a summer because there was a volcanic event that happened, which basically lowered the Earth's temperature in the northern hemisphere. And the Abernathy Indians grew this Abernathy corn, and that was the only thing that grew that entire summer where the temperatures were lower and the growing season was shorter. But that's what those Indians survived on. So anyways, it's special heritage corn for that area. So we brought some in, planted some. We actually hand harvested it, which I don't recommend to anybody, but it's for a cool project to where we're filling some barrels with that corn, and then we're also replanting it to try to get some more pounds, so that way we can just keep kind of growing that portion for us. We just want to look at doing something a little different, a little more unique, because here in our market here in Colorado, it's a very crowded marketplace. So a lot of the breweries and distilleries are looking at their raw materials as a place to start the differentiation. Like everybody can order the same 2-row, but from the pallets from BSG that show up. But now when you start looking at your raw materials a little different, you can start to formulate some of that differentiation for you. So the other major piece of our operation is land and securing and basically growing our future. If you remember back, we only own 200 acres as a family farm here in Loveland, but we're farming on 1,500 total acres. Well, this is where we get to a pinch point in our operation, is because we can't secure enough land to be able to continue all the growth that we want to have. So we're making sure that we're working with the farmers around us to put some of their farmland into conservation easements. Now, this is a huge undertaking, and some of it I don't totally understand because there's a lot of legal issues. But basically, we want to make sure that the farmers around us are leaving their farmland as such. There's a lot of developers that you can sell it to, and it's just extremely lucrative as a farmer to relieve your land to the developers. I mean, I can't blame them. It's just far too lucrative. But we're running out of farmland in northern Colorado, and so we're also working to put some of these farms around us into conservation easements, so that way they stay in farmland forever. And then, it's a little self-serving because we get to farm that as well. But I mean, if you can't grow food, then, food scarcity in your area, not just for, beer and distilled spirits, but, we have to make sure to maintain farmland and to make sure there are people there to farm it, because I tell you what, farming is not easy. And it is not a sought after profession for people moving forward. So anyways, we're trying to just make sure that we are securing enough land for us to keep our operation moving forward. That way we can grow enough raw material for us. So we started down the path. It's about 1.5 years ago. We partnered with a company called Mad Ag, and they're out of Boulder, here in Colorado, and they are solely focused on regenerative agriculture practices. So we, have been talking a lot about them. We have to figure out a way to produce the same volume of material, but we're going to have to do it with less land moving forward. Because we can't secure all that farmland. So we have to look at our farming practices and try to make some changes to where we can, do more with less. A lot of this is, they're cost savings measures for our operation. So just the picture down here on the bottom left is right after we planted. I think we pulled barley off the field, or it was right in between barley. So anyways, we grew peas and turnips inside of those fields right after barley was harvested. And so the peas are replacing the nitrogen that the barley's taking out of the soil. And then the turnips are basically decompacting the soil. So that way we don't have to till it. It's kind of interesting when you look around in northern Colorado as you move into October and November, all the fields are completely barren around us, but our fields have vegetation on them. And this is kind of it's an interesting concept for farmers because they've always done it, this way. We till the soil and then we let it sit until next year. Well, you lose a lot of topsoil, through erosion and wind. So we want to make sure that we have material still on the farm or on that land to help hold some of that moisture, create that biodiversity, to basically help our soil. So you can look on the bottom right where we were digging some holes in worms. This is a sign of healthy soil. So in one shovelful, this is what we're seeing out in our fields, which is great. So just a little bit more on what we did for practices is we harvested the barley, planted the peas, planted the turnips, and basically just let those die out in the field. So all that material stays out into the field. And then we brought some cows in and we grazed them in quadrants throughout those fields for some natural fertilizer. And so the hope is that the next time that we go back onto this field, with good farming practices, that our yield will be a little higher, and that's going to help us do more with less is by taking care of the soil a little better. We also started our own composting because just the fertilizer costs have just absolutely skyrocketed for the farm. And so we started looking at creating our own fertilizer. And so that's what we're doing. So then, what's next for us as a company? We just continue education in the market, not just being a supplier of malted barley, but a partner in the industry, strategic partner. We want to make sure to continue to grow with our customers that are growing. Develop basically a deeper rooted relationship with them. We have quite a few breweries that are tied into our operation where all the raw materials that they're using are coming from our malt house, which is really exciting, really cool to see. And we work really hard to reconnect our customers to the land. It has been in my experience that the farming piece is almost a lost art, and the malting piece is a lost art, where we're so accustomed to ordering things out of a catalog or off of a website, and it just shows up at the brewery or distillery on a pallet and it's ready to go, and you just put it in the mash tun, you move on. Like that's just the way it's gone. But we're working really hard to reconnect those folks back to the land and back to our farm because it's important. The amount of brewers that have never seen a malting facility or have never seen barley out in the field is really staggering. It's really interesting when you bring them out to the farm and they get to walk in the barley and they get to see it growing and they get to see the harvesting equipment. There's just this aha moment and this like clarity where, you just are all of a sudden you're connected with what's going on and you're vested into what's going on in the land. Every year we throw what we call field day. It's just a big party as a thank you to our customers. And we do it out in the middle of a barley field. And we bring the combines out and we actually combine the barley for everybody to see it happen. So they get to ride the combine. They get to see the barley being combined. They get to hang out and we eat a cow and drink a lot of spirits and a lot of beers all made from our products. But, there's a lot of people in this industry that have never participated in anything like that. I mean, beer and whiskey, this is an agricultural product, but a lot of folks don't have that agricultural connection anymore. It's just kind of lost. So then we have our own brand of whiskey that's about ready to hit the market, which is really exciting. It's American single malt whiskey. So about 4 years ago, it's almost 5 years ago, when we started to go down this road of producing single malt whiskey, we were just alleviating some product that was getting old. And we just didn't have a place for it. So we partnered with a distillery to produce basically what is Root Shoot American single malt whiskey. And we're really shooting for a release on this for Valentine's Day because we are in the city of love. But anyways, this is going to be a pretty cool project where this is the very first release. This is a bottled in bond. And then every year from basically this release forward, we have doubled the amount of grains that we've been sending out to be distilled for our own brand. So we just have an exponentially growing whiskey offering over the next few years. And every year will be just a touch different. So just really excited about what the future holds for us here at Root Shoot. And then this is a pretty impactful picture. This is the fires that were happening in the High Park fire in Fort Collins. So this is the view. And I wish I have a panoramic of this picture, but the panoramic doesn't fit on this slide. But this is a really good look at, this fire was extremely close to not only just the city of Fort Collins, but, you can see the smoke. And this went on for a couple months during the summer 2 years ago. And it was just an incredibly impactful photo of, how things can drastically change in a hurry. It's pretty stark. And then I would just say that we're, as a company, we're just looking forward to the future and, making sure that we're providing high quality raw materials, always with the future in mind. Anyways, that's about all I got.
All right. Does anyone have any questions for Mike? Anything at all? We'll see if there's anything. That was a great story, Mike. That was a lot of information. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's been a wild journey for, the 5 years that I've been a part of this operation. But
looks like you have one question from Jeff. Can you speak to the economics a bit? How are you finding the profitability relative to the raw ingredients?
So the vertical integration of our operation, right? We don't have many other people to pay other than ourselves for all these processes. Now we are debt loaded because we purchased some top end equipment. We have the cleaners. We own the trucks. I mean, that's really helped drive that profit margin for us, is because we are truly doing all of those attributes. Like, not only do I malt, but I also drive the truck, and I clean the barley, and I unload the trucks at harvest time. Like, that is truly how we're, able to operate the way that we can. And being the farmer, like, we're honestly just paying ourselves for the barley that we're growing. So there's not a whole lot of profitability in malting, but we've been able to close that gap to just make sure that we're moving forward all the time.
All right. Next question is, do you have distribution in Mexico?
If you want to pay some logistics, we'll send some stuff to you.
Then, can you get Maris Otter seeds to grow in Colorado?
That is a protected variety. That is a coveted variety. That they will not release any of those seeds anywhere. That is a very specific barley variety that one company owns and that one company malts. But if you're in our area, I would suggest trying our English pale malts, because it is, we bill it as an Maris Otter substitute that's just fresher and better.
All right. Another question from Rob. What makes your malts better than the competition?
We're always shooting for, let me back up a little bit. So there are a lot of your big malt houses are blending. They're blending to hit certain specs. So what we're trying to do is push the envelope for quality. So we're delivering a higher quality product than you can get from some of the competitors, just because they are blending things down to be very consistent. We have a lot of our customers that take bags out of their recipes because they're getting a higher extract than what they were in using other malts, and it's just because it's fresher. So we've been able to, by delivering on freshness, it's corresponding to, the brewers being able to get some more liquor out of their processes.
Great. Are you responding to any impacts of climate change, or has it been pretty non-impactful to you?
Man, it is everywhere. It's snowing today. This summer was extremely hot and dry. We harvested barley, the earliest that the farm has ever harvested barley this year. And it was because we went almost an entire month with zero precipitation. It is everywhere. The fires, lack of water, urban sprawl. Everything there is just, it's very impactful, and it's impactful in ways that you don't even think about.
So with that, do you just have to be very fluid and flexible when it comes to harvest seasons, and you can only plan so much? It's just kind of
right. So
dependent.
Living the life of a farmer is tough. There's a lot of watching the weather, especially once we get closer to harvest time, because you want to get the barley out of the ground and into storage before it rains. Like, you do not want it to rain on your barley. So you have to be consistently watching temperatures and pulling readings and walking the fields and pulling those kernels off and testing them for protein levels and moisture contents. It's a challenge to be able to do all that stuff very well.
Is brewing with the Genie malt what makes it stand out from other malt varieties?
If you go back, we've malted a lot of different varieties of barley, and we really prefer the Genie because it does well for us in all different phases. But what it has is, it has this creamy texture to the wort or the hot steep that is not in some of the other barley varieties that we malt. There's just something about it where this honey, creamy, toasty flavor in it. I mean, it's really fantastic. If you ever get the chance to do some hot steeps, check out the ASBC hot steep method, which is the American Society of Brewing Chemists, and they have a methodology for testing, raw materials like that. So where we do a lot of hot steeps against each other's malts. So we're always testing against the competition. We test against ourselves, and we're always just trying things all along the way. And it's really, truly amazing to see the differences in the malt. Most recently, we did some trials with Funkworks, which is here in Fort Collins, and they were looking to move from whatever the silo malt that they were getting, and move over to us to provide that for them. Well, I came in and they narrowed it down to about 4 different malted barleys from different companies that they were going to trial. And we hot steeped all 4 of those, and then they tasted through that and they selected ours. And now there's lots of things going on in that hot steep where you can evaluate like the filter time, the color, the clarity, the smells, the flavor. I mean, there's just so much stuff going on in that simple test that you can do to evaluate malt. But it's I like the Genie malt. The Genie barley is the bomb. And then it's also one, in that craft malters competition. I think it took home, it's winning the majority of all the prizes that are out there. And so there's something going on with that barley variety where it's pretty magical, which is hence why they call it Genie.
That's great. Someone else asked, have you thought of working with large homebrew distributors to get your grains into the hands of homebrewers?
Yeah. As a homebrewer, you can go to Northern Brewer and order our products there. They're super fresh.
And someone else commented Midwest Supply also has
cool.
some of your malts.
Yep. Those homebrew stores are kind of, they're dwindling. And so those online ones are coming on strong with where you can pick up our product.
So if a homebrewer were to, what three that they should try? Like if you could just name 3 that they should definitely try from you guys, what would they be? Genie
Pale, which is our standard. The English Pale Malt is really good. And then I think Munich 10 is beautiful. It has such great color and such depth of flavor. The beers that people are making it, especially at like Oktoberfest season, like it blows my mind. It's my favorite time of the year as a maltster. Like this is when, all my hard work shines, where people are making lagers with these beautiful, flavorful malts, and they're giving them the amount of time that they should have in the tanks. And it's just magical. I can't explain it.
All right. Another question is, have you hot steeped aged malt versus fresh malt from your malt house? If so, what were the major differences, if any?
We do some back batches on some stuff, but I think using fresh malt is really important because what happens is you have something that's called, they call it slack malt. And that's when it's exposed to too much oxygen. And so what happens is that oxygen then softens that grain up in the humidity. And so you have a potential loss of extract and some potential off flavors that happen when you have aged malt. So you really want to keep that stuff airtight and as fresh as possible. I mean, if you're trying to make some high quality beer, you want to be able to take care of that malt to be able to produce that. I mean, that's one of those control points that, some people don't think about, but it's really critical that you are brewing with fresh malt, and it just translates downstream. So if you want to make good beer, use fresh malt.
All right. Are there any other questions? If not, then that will conclude our presentation. Just another reminder, I will send out this recorded presentation as well as Mike's contact information. Here's another quick question. Do you have a chemistry background or on-the-job training?
I have no chemistry background. We were just talking about this off air. Like we have trial and error and a lot of hard knocks and a lot of learning that has gone along the way from our first batches of malt to where we are today.
And it's working.
We're hanging in there.
All right. Thank you once again for joining us today, Mike. Thank you for everyone who tuned in. And with that, I hope everyone has a great day.
Cool. Thanks everybody.